always consider the basics. Any internal combustion engine, guys, whether it be in your car or your lawnmower, will always require the basic prerequisites to be met before you can expect basic engine operation. Don't start diving into tiny details when you haven't looked at the basic operating requirements first. This video is predicated on a simple acronym. The concept of an acronym is not new. In order to assist you in methodically troubleshooting something, it's not my concept, but I've added a few items in order to make it a wee bit simpler and a wee bit more detailed in this particular video. So the acronym we'll be dealing with is factors. Not only the factors you should consider in the event that you're experiencing trouble, but that is the acronym itself, standing for fuel, air, compression, timing, oversight, rotation, and spark. It is not a comprehensive list, guys. It's just a basic overview. It is not comprehensive. It is not prioritized. Start with the basics first. Don't get overly complicated. Start with the basics first. Fuel. Make sure there's fuel in the tank. This seems simple and obvious, but all of us have run out of a machine or a vehicle out of fuel at some point in time and then wondered what the hell's happening. As simple as fuel in the tank. Less obvious is the quality of the fuel in the tank. Is it contaminated? Is there water in the tank? Is there microbiological contamination if it's been in there for extended periods of time? Is the volatility of the fuel okay if it's been in there for extended periods of time? All considerations before you even look at the fuel pump, whether it be mechanical or electric, with respect to its volume and pressure output, before you consider the carburetor or the injection system if applicable. If an engine won't start, most people will look at the intake, the filter in particular. Is it collapsed? Is it contaminated? Is your local squirrel storing its nuts in the housing there? These are things a lot of people would consider. Less obvious is looking at the backside of the system, the exhaust system. Did you run over a block of ice? Has it crushed the exhaust pipe? Is the catalytic converters falling to bits? If there's no throughput in the system, that is to say that the intake side is clear as well as the exhaust, you're not going to have respectable manifold pressures or vacuum in order for the system to actually operate correctly. The compression is an obvious prerequisite for any engine to operate correctly, right? This typically speaks to the condition of the rings, the cylinder walls, the valves, the valve seats, the valve train, the head gasket. These are all basic considerations. Now, again, I'll mention that there is some degree of overlap in this list, guys. You're not going to get compression if you don't have rotation, for example, right? So there is some degree of redundancy in this list, but they're left in there as separate items for a reason. Timing is another obvious consideration that must be met in order to expect normal operation, both mechanical and electrical with respect to the ignition system, the spark. The mechanical end of things, the cam and the crank correlationship, the valve operation, all has to be in time in order for things to operate correctly, if at all. The ignition system, the spark has to occur at the proper point in the cycle in order for things to operate correctly. Oversight is a separate category listed here, guys, in the interest of modernity. Most modern engines, or even standalone engines, will have a separate electronic engine control module that's there for the oversight or the control of the operation of the engine, right? It'll typically do so through looking at sensors. The ECM will do the computation itself based on the operating conditions that prevail at the time and make any adjustments with its output actuators. None of which can happen if the ECM is not being supplied with adequate power and ground. Don't overlook the obvious. Rotation is left in here as a separate item, guys, because when you turn the key on your car, for example, you hear the starter rotating the flywheel, rotating the crank. Okay, you have rotation, right? Or do you? Is the top end rotating in synchronization with the bottom end? Has there been an issue with the timing belt, the chain, timing gears? It can happen. You can have a loss of continuity in the system and you don't have the rotation that you're expecting. The spark is an obvious requirement for any non-diesel engine at the proper time and in the proper firing order and the proper quality. Look for the basics, guys.